As US-China rivalry heightens, the pandemic could tilt global power in Beijing's favor. The pandemic will increase US-China strategic rivalry. China is likely to use the crisis as an opportunity to raise its profile and expand its influence, particularly over countries hard hit by the pandemic. The economic fallout from the global pandemic will have a long-lasting impact on the developed US and European economies, while China will be the first to recover. This is according to the Economist Intelligence Unit. The coronavirus pandemic will fuel the already bad rivalry between the US and China and could even tilt the balance of global power in Beijing's favor. Tensions have already flared on a few fronts since the pandemic started. Washington and Beijing are sniping at one another about the true extent and origin of the coronavirus outbreak. US President Donald Trump threatened tariffs again. The two countries have even squabbled about the South China Sea issue. The pandemic will increase US-China strategic rivalry. The coronavirus pandemic is undoubtedly fueling an increase in geopolitical tensions between the US and China. There is also a prediction that this virus will remain a key source of friction for the next 12 months. In times of global crisis, such rivalries tend to intensify rather than abate. The coronavirus crisis has led to a further deterioration in the already chronically bad relations between China and the US. The coronavirus epidemic is not the cause of the difficulties in the relationship of the two countries. However, it is merely exacerbating trends that have existed for years as both countries compete for economic dominance. The pandemic is therefore likely to accelerate the rebalancing of global economic power from the West to the East in the coming years. Both economic giants have been embroiled in a trade war for the past couple of years, which has spilled over into disputes on intellectual property rights and evolved into larger issues such as technology dominance. In January, both countries reached a Phase 1 deal before the virus hit, but the future of the deal is now in question. Last week, Trump said it is now secondary to the pandemic and threatened new tariffs on Beijing in retaliation for its virus response. Trump is likely to build his presidential campaign around a Blame China rallying call, and if he gets re-elected, it would lead to another 4 years of a difficult relation with Beijing. Beijing will use crisis as opportunity to extend global influence. Crucially though, despite the anti-China rhetoric, the pandemic would likely speed up the shift in global power from the West to the East. China has been blamed by not just the US, but also the UK and Australia for its initial response to the outbreak, which was criticized as slow and non-transparent. But that won't stop the Asian giant from extending itself globally. China could even use the crisis as an opportunity to raise its profile and expand its influence, particularly over countries hard hit by the pandemic, by providing much-needed support. Beijing has already embarked on so-called mask diplomacy, sending medical supplies to affected countries. In particular, China could further cement its presence in parts of Africa, Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and the European Union. Beijing's aggressive global propaganda campaign promoting China's role in suppressing the virus, a looming global recession that'll sap up the appetite of many leaders to blame their biggest trade partner for how it handled the outbreak, and the pandemic underscoring the absence of American leadership on the global stage. The cases in the US have shot up, making it the worst hit country, while Chinese government data showed the outbreak has subsided to a few cases a day in the mainland. Those three factors may result in China's power and increasing their influence, although it's stressed it is still too early to tell. The economic fallout from the global pandemic will have a long-lasting impact on the developed US and European economies. That's because the fiscal and monetary measures that those countries have to deal with, the crisis will result in greater dependence on easy money and debt, causing years of slower growth. On the other hand, China, simply by the virtue of being the first to emerge from the crisis, will also be the first to recover economically. The pandemic is therefore likely to accelerate the rebalancing of global economic power from the west to the east, unless the developed nations change course and pursue a radically different economic path after the crisis. The gap between the slow-growing West and the economically dynamic East is likely to widen. Hope you all are having a great weekend. For all of us here at Bulls vs. Bears Club, I'm Ron, wishing you a pleasant week ahead.